So I met Bhagawan when I was probably 16 or 17. It was about 30 years back. So I had a darshan of Bhagawan in Tiruvannamalai when he was still in his physical body. So that was again 30 years back, and again I was a teenager, so I don't think I was even in the state of being where I could be receptive to what he was offering. But of course, Bhagavan always says that whoever enters the ashram, there is going to be a downpour of my grace on them, right? Whether they realize that or not. So I hope I got some of that, even though I was not receptive. I was I had very analytical thoughts in my mind, including why are people chanting his name instead of the Lord's name. Who's this Swami, who is smoking a cigar and all of that. So, the usual thoughts that we all have. So that's how my first, darshan, with Bhagavan, started. And then, the next 30 years, until, this, recent visit of Mataji, I had absolutely no thought of Bhagavan. I had completely forgotten that I had even been to Tiruvannamalai. I had completely forgotten the Nama, so I literally had not even said the Nama once, right, after my darshan 30 years back. But then, when Mataji came, I wanted to come to the satsang because I wanted to learn more about Bhagavan, because our beloved Guruji, Shri Muralidhara Swamiji, he considers Bhagavan as one of his gurus or his masters. So I wanted to learn more about the Guru's Guru. I wanted to be there in the satsang. I wanted to understand who this great Mahatma was, because I did miss the opportunity initially. So I was there in the satsang with Devaki Mataji, and it was very profound for me in many ways. But just to be very short, some of the things that she was talking about, again, I've heard many Mahatmas, explain the same thing, but there was something that penetrated my, being, in that, she was talking about, her perspectives or Bhagavan's perspectives, of life in general, how this is a finished movie, right? Your entire life is a finished movie. And every single thing is being orchestrated by the divine, right? So every single detail, every single person that you meet, every single event in your life is being, orchestrated by the divine. And, we cannot take any doership for anything that we do. And that, message somehow, trickled in me, and it started to create a certain transformation. At least that's the way I felt. And then the other thing was that, this Nama, this Bhagavan Nama, Yogi Ramsuratkumar Nama that I had heard 30 years back, it started to suddenly, out of nowhere, it started to come alive. Actually, right after the satsang, in fact, the satsang was not even over that day, back in August. And when we were driving back home, I was telling my wife Pradeepa that they chant Yogi Ramsuratkumar Jaya Guru Jaya Guru Jaya Guru Raya. So that was the original way they used to chant. So this was 30 years back, and again, I had no conscious recollection of that, but suddenly it started to come to my memory, right? And then I wanted to listen, of course I wanted to understand and know more about Bhagavan. This curiosity, this thirst, started becoming a thing in me. And so the first thing I did was, okay, number Guruji Yogi Ramsuratkumar Bhagavan Pati enna sollirukkaru appdi therinjikalam. So that's the point where I started, right? So I started to listen to a lot of videos. I was even asking you, for some of those videos where Guruji would talk about Yogi Ji. So that's where I started, and then I there were a lot of great things, and I learned that Guruji has a phenomenal reverence for Bhagavan. The same kind of reverence that Bhagavan had for his guru, Papa Ramdas. And in fact, I've heard Devaki Ma say that when any of the disciples or anybody from Papa Ramdas, come and visit Bhagawan, ordinary people like you and me, Bhagawan would prostrate to them, saying that you have come from my Guru and so you have brought blessings from my Guru. So that was his humility, right? So he was willing to accept whatever they would bring to him. So similarly, I felt like our beloved Guruji, he has the same reverence, for Bhagavan. So I wanted to, understand more of, Guruji's perspectives on Bhagavan. And there were a couple of things, which stood out. There was, I think, one talk or one lecture where Shri Guruji talks about the purpose of avatars, right? So he talks about the Rama avatar. Of course, Rama did walk the path of dharma, and he was a role model for every human being in that way. But more than that, Guruji says that beyond all that, the real purpose of Rama avatar was to leave behind the name Rama, the Rama Nama, right? Same thing with Krishna avatar. Again, Krishna did wonderful leelas and everything else, that we all are very fond of. But besides all that, the ultimate purpose of the avatar was to leave the name behind. Right? Of course, the Rama Nama and the Krishna Nama are now together infused in the Maha Mantra, which we just chanted right now. And then Guruji goes on to talk about Yogi Ramsuratkumar in the same light, and he says that Yogi Bhagavan's avatar was also exactly the same thing like Rama avatar or Krishna avatar, in that Yogi Bhagavan, his entire purpose of having born here was just to leave his name behind for humanity. Right? So that coming from a Mahatma like Shri Guruji, that is a very profound statement. So he's basically saying that whether you chant the Rama Nama or the Krishna Nama, it is the same thing. It's the same thing as Yogi Bhagavan's Nama. So that's what he's saying. And then in fact, back in I think 2001 or 2002, I remember exactly. I believe Shri Guruji and many of his devotees and disciples, they chanted Yogi Ramsuratkumar Nama for 48 days when there was severe drought in Tamil Nadu, and they brought rains to the state. So that's really how much Guruji himself he values the Nama, the reverence he has for this Nama. So that's been my experience. And again, I recently had the great opportunity, great fortune to be in Tiruvannamalai, be in the ashram, and be in the presence of Yogi Bhagawan, and also in the presence of Devaki Mataji. That in itself was a great, very nice story. With a lot of details, and how Bhagavan had orchestrated, how Shri Guruji had orchestrated everything for me. So I could, even though my entire trip to India was only 5 days, I had actually gone on a business trip, and 3.5 of those 5 days I spent working, and then in the remaining day and a half, I was not only able to go to Tiruvannamalai and have this wonderful experience, but also come back and have the darshan of Guruji as though to close the entire loop and to share what I experienced back in Tiruvannamalai. So that was very special for me. Of course, some other day I'll share more of that detail. But in terms of the Yogi Bhagavan Nama, the one thing of course Yogi Ji says is that you can take my Nama, you can experiment with it. That's how bold he is behind what he is giving to the humanity. So he is saying, take my Nama, put it in a test tube, experiment with it, chant my Nama, my Father is going to help you, right? And just see what happens, the moment you chant, right? So that's how much, he emphasizes the importance of the Nama. And of course, like Devaki Mataji has talked about, the Nama not only, creates very favorable external situations or whatever you're, aspiring for, those all, come true, but it also creates the inner transformation, which is ultimately, what we all want. So I'm so glad that we were able to celebrate Bhagavan's Jayanti today, and thank you again, Bhagavan.